Okay, so this question is actually quite a nice question. There's a lot you can say here for just 3 marks. So let's sort of deconstruct it a little bit first. Before I do that, you can see I've already put a little plan box at the top because I'm going to get some key ideas or key terms in there that I think I need to use as I deconstruct the question. You can always cross that out or you can leave it in, it's up to you. So the key thing here that they're telling us that we've got to do, and I'm going to actually almost do that as a command term in green, is that I must refer to an example to be able to get all 3 marks. I can't just use theory. So it wants us to describe, which is relatively straightforward. It wants a description of how selective attention prevents information overload. So before we even start going into that process or what things happen, I think I'm going to try to define or describe both selective attention and info overload. That seems like a reasonable thing to try to get some theory in before we start thinking about how that process happens. Now, what are the key words that come to mind when we think about selective attention? We think about filtration. And if we think about filtration, we also think about stimuli. And we know that if we've got a sensory overload of stimuli, it can lead to things like freezing, but it's linked to single channel hypothesis. Maybe we don't need to go into that for a 3 marker, but that's essentially why we're getting that information overload. So we've got to prevent that through filtration of relevant information. So we'll bring that into the answer in just a second. What else do we think of? Well, we know that certain things can affect how this process happens, and how it happens is largely affected by experience, which is obviously linked to the long-term memory. Are we adept? Are we good at being able to disregard useless stimuli, or are we a novice and we've not yet determined what the useless stimuli are in a situation? So long-term memory is important in terms of experience. And thinking about memory, we also know that this filtration occurs from the short-term sensory store to the short-term memory. So short-term memory is limited, 7 plus minus 2 pieces of information. We've got a capacity in our short-term memory, so we can only really attend to 7 roughly pieces of information at once, and that's why that filtration or selective attention is really important. So that would be my plan. I'm going to show you a model answer now, and obviously we're going to think of an example to use in terms of performance of skills. So that's personal to you, but I'll put one into the answer. Okay, so there we go, there's an answer. I'm just going to highlight the key terms that we've managed to use. So obviously we've talked about selective attention, we've talked about information overload, we've used the word stimuli, sensory overload, I guess, freezing, single channel hypothesis links in there. It's not necessarily a key term, but it's a key idea, this one of experience and the long-term memory. Again, relevant stimuli really factors into selective attention. Becomes fast ultimate filtration, that's really important. Background noise, I didn't put that in the plan, but that's definitely linked to selective attention, and hopefully our examples are going to highlight that. And then also we've looked at the STSS, short-term sensory store, and the short-term memory. So lots and lots of key terms you can see in terms of if that was a 6 marker or a 5 marker, we need lots of key terminology in, and that's how to integrate it in. We have put a couple of examples in there as well. So a 1v1, the defender's position in football. If you're taking on a defender, what's their body position? That's key information in terms of deciding which way to go or which way to pass. And then just to back it up, because it does say use an example, but I'm going to use another one just to back that up. We've also used a really clear one, which is focusing on only the most relevant information, which would be the starter's gun in a 100-meter race.